Okay, so moving on, we are going to start taking some notes. So you'll need to open up a Google Doc for your notes folder. You will turn these notes in at the end. And we want to talk about some kind of basic information about how to make a good Google Slides presentation. So we're starting our slides unit. We want to make sure that as we receive instruction that we are going to start making better presentations than what we made before. So we want to think about what are some of the conceptual things to remember as we are practicing and incorporating our skills. So the first thing I want you to understand is that you want to make sure that you are engaging and that you are have your audience with you the whole time and that they're not feeling sleepy and bored. So we're going to talk about these rules of thumb. And a rule of thumb is simply just kind of a guideline to go through and think about when you're working through your presentation. So I'm going to talk about these and I expect you to take notes. So by the end of your notes, you're simply going to have the 10 rules of thumb listed and what they are. Some of them go into greater detail, and I'll tell you that when you do not have to write down additional notes. But the rule of thumb number one is to organize your presentations. Presentations should make sense. They should follow a pattern. Here's an example of what that pattern should look like. You should always have a title slide. You should state your objective as far as what is it that this presentation is telling us about. You'll have your content or your body, the information of your presentation. And then finally, you'll close or summarize at the end. So go ahead and type this out. Now, listen, I'm going to keep talking, but hopefully you understand by now that you can just pause me, get caught up, and then hit play. Rule of thumb number two is to think about your font size. You want to make sure you use large, legible fonts. And the word legible in this context, meaning that it's easy to read. You're going to think about at least 24 points for your text and 32 or higher for your headers. You're going to see this example down here. You're going to see this example down here at the bottom discussing or showing you how big these fonts actually appear. And this is a kind of traditional student area to improve upon, where a lot of times I'm just like, why is there so much extra white space? Why are we not increasing the font size? I've had students that have tried to give presentations in class and they can't even read their own presentation because the font size is too small. So again, large legible fonts, then take a note with these numbers for guidelines. Rule of thumb number three, you don't want to have too many words on your slide. A kind of guideline would be to think about the 7x7 rule. So no more than 7 words per line and 7 lines on a slide. Now, I'm not going to ever count out words and lines when I'm looking at a student presentation. So I'll just tell you that just remember, you don't want to have a big chunk of text that you're reading from. It's very boring to be read to when you're an audience member when someone's giving a presentation. Number 4, you want to make sure that you keep your audience alert. So if I just read from my slides, it's reasonable to think that you may have someone in the audience that just reads ahead and then they're just sitting there daydreaming, waiting for you to stop reading. So you'll notice that I am just talking based on my bullet points as I give this presentation. I don't have typed out everything that I want to say, which helps to make it more interesting. Number 5, be careful with your colors and designs. You want to make sure that sometimes students get caught up in trying to get through. I had one student, for example, like to have their headings have every other letter in a word be a different color, just thinking that it sounded or seemed kind of interesting and a better way to design, but it was distracting on the eyes. And you can see the example here at the bottom with every other word. I mean, it just makes it kind of hard to read. And then over here on the right-hand side, it's great to put pictures in its backgrounds. When we work through our skills for this week, we will put pictures for backgrounds. But you have to be careful that that picture doesn't compromise the readability of your text. Number 6, you want to be careful that you use your animations, which is movement on a slide that we'll learn about, and your sounds very sparingly. You want to make sure that you are not having too much animation or it's going to distract from your message. Here's an example of an over animated slide. So obviously we're just looking at these moving dogs, we're checking out the text flying in, and I don't know what anybody said. So just be careful. Animations really just to create emphasis for your ideas and not to distract. Number 7, you want to make sure that you use a lot of pictures when you're on a presentation. I love a lot of pictures on my student presentations. You want to make sure, though, that you choose pictures that make sense with the message of your presentation. Here's an example of what not to do. So this slide's supposed to be about how English bulldogs can be intimidating and are great guard dogs. But then look at this picture. Like a student could have just Googled images of English bulldogs and found this handsome guy, but he has on a hat and a matching jacket, and I am in no way afraid of him. I do not think that he is a guard dog, although he looks very handsome in his outfit. Number 8, we want to make sure that you always pay attention to your grammar and your spelling. There really is no reason why anybody, regardless of your innate abilities with English and spelling and grammar, should ever, when you're sitting at a computer and all of the editing resources a computer provides, you shouldn't have a bunch of spelling and grammar errors. So if that's the case, then you're just not really finishing your assignment, and you need to make sure that you take advantage of those resources. Here's an example. Lots of misspelled things here. If I was sitting in the audience listening to a presentation and saw this, I would be thinking, I'm not so sure that this person is necessarily an expert in this field. I'm kind of thinking maybe they don't really know what they're talking about. Lots of misspelled words, and you're on a computer. Number 9, we kind of know about this from our Sheets unit. You have charts and graphs. It really just helps all those numbers to be easier to read. So adding in charts and graphs, copying them over from Sheets is the best way. You can incorporate charts and slides, but Sheets is much better, and you already know how to use it. Here's an example. I can look at this and not have to read a single word on the page and know that dogs is the preferred pet. And we have other and lizard in the lower category. So, so easy to understand, both the pie chart and the column chart. And then finally, keep it simple. You don't need to have everything that you know how to do on every single slide. Now, we will have an assignment next week where you'll show me everything that you know how to do. So I'm going to kind of break this rule for some of the things that we do in class, just because I want to see all of your skills. But if you were doing a presentation outside of computer applications, you do want to keep it simple and to the point. Okay, go ahead and go back if you need to. Pause me, fill in your notes, and then turn them into the assignment section in the module.